property that's in a rapidly developing area, you have to develop it.
Yeah.
You'd have to turn it over because to maintain a private property as a huge backyard, this isn't realistic.
Yeah.
And so I had a really deep desire to preserve this place. And it played out in having it open as a wedding and event space, as a way to preserve it. So that was kind of my initial draw. And then I've had different reasons over the years to keep it going. But initially, I mean, that's the honest response to that question.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there a time you wanted to quit?
Yes.
Yeah. If so, why and how did you overcome it?
Yes. Yeah. Multiple times over the years. It's hard at times. At this point, I've implemented so many systems and have created such a supportive team that there is a lot more ease into how we operate and a lot more fun. But it's taken intentional work in order to create that culture and to create that.
Yeah.
So with that being said, when I was the one out here setting up all the chairs and dragging them all over the property and setting up all the tables and staying here day in and day out for every single event and directing cars and dealing with all that weddings and property maintenance can do, I have to be a really fast learner. There were times I was like, this might be too much. And then because I started 11 years ago and I was at a different time in life, I had to figure out as a more mature adult if I wanted my life to look like it did.
Yeah.
And I wanted to continue doing this. And so I had to take some thought and think like, does this still fulfill what is meaningful to me as my updated version of myself, 5-7 years later? And the answer has been yes. I really love this industry and I love the work that I do and I love the team that I'm able to build out here. I'm also very stubborn, very stubborn. And so the thought of something not being successful at the end of the day really isn't an option. And I will troubleshoot something until I figure it out. And so that's also been a little bit of I wanted to quit, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So what was your background originally? What did you go to school?
I did, yeah. So I went to university. I went to a private university in Oregon, George Fox University, and my emphasis was international studies. So a far cry from, well, I say seemingly a far cry from what I do now. But I believe that emphasis really did help me because what it did, my opportunities to study abroad and to study different cultures allows me to better understand people. And that's what so much of this industry is. And each couple that comes in and is our client, they come representing essentially their own culture. And it doesn't mean that they have to be, international or come from a different culture, but they have a way of viewing the world and they have a way of planning their wedding, and the families always play into wedding planning. I might have a couple, but I'm dealing with everything that they bring, and sometimes I really am dealing with the mother of the bride or father of the bride. So it better helped me be more empathetic and understanding of each of our couples based on what I studied. So yeah, that was my schooling background. I really didn't have a lot of work history. I worked at Starbucks. I worked at, I put on some local events that helped me understand maybe the wheel of events, meaning catering and garbage and setup and decor and guest access, those kinds of things, how they all play into a seamless event. So I had that, but aside from that, I learned fast.
Trial and
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your favorite thing about being an owner?
I have a lot of favorite things. I really love the ability to create the life I prefer. And that is down to the office atmosphere. That at this point I can decide my hours, my working hours. I can plan vacations as I want to or need to, especially with me having my first child in July. Like, I'm able to just plan accordingly. And if I was working for a job that dictated otherwise, that wouldn't be a reality for me. And then just working in this kind of atmosphere where I've watched a lot of these plants, I've watched them grow over the last 10 years. And some of them I've chosen where they've been placed.
Yeah.
And so that's really fun too. So I think, yeah, creating the culture both visually that I get to be in, and then also the people that are on my team. I'm able to decide and then create that culture. How do we talk? How do we interact with our clients? How do we view money? How do we express things? What do we believe about ourselves and being in this industry, and what's important to us as a business? Like all those things, I get to decide, and that's the best part to me.
Yeah. Was it hard to, I guess, like, kind of working weekends, or like weekends being your busiest or like main focus? Is that hard, or was that hard to get used to?
In my earlier years, yeah, I suppose it was hard. I think back then I was just focused on doing what needed to be done. So like that's what my life looked like, and that was just my normal.
Yeah.
I haven't worked an event probably 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So at this point, my weekends aren't my busiest time. My busiest time is all the beforehand, and then I have staff that are here on weekends.
Yeah.
If there is something that I need to get called on, or if there's something that needs to be managed, then I will need to come out here, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if I didn't have weekends, that would be tough, because that would have me working, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of things that I like to have prepared that would put me here like Monday through Friday, and then I'd be here rocking weddings thereafter. So.
Okay, what was the most challenging aspect of building your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most challenging thing is allowing myself to evolve, and then to have that be reflected in the company. When you start a company really young, I was very insecure, and everything was emotional. And if a client was unhappy, I was unhappy. And if I was stressing about finances, like everything wore on me emotionally, and I was very fragile. Over the years, I've better learned that I can have boundaries both as a person and have a lot more confidence in knowing what I know to be true, and having it be like this particular way and holding that line. And so I've had to update that version of myself, like as a person. Like this is the new me. I'm not so insecure anymore. So hello. I'm confident me now. We have to catch up. But then implementing that in the business, because the business has to evolve as I evolve. And there's certain things that used to cause me anxiety that emotionally might still trigger me, that I have to realize, like, oh, no, that was 5 years ago. You dealt with that particular issue, and that really was emotional. But you have these systems in place, and that doesn't need to trigger you anymore. So just be the boss that you are today. So I think that has been challenging. And then also there's just the logistics of creating a solid staff.
Yeah.
And having confidence in the people that you hire. But that takes training them in the way that you prefer. Yeah. And realizing it's not cute to do everything on your own. It's at the end of the day, like one of the questions you have is about the success of the company, and like looking back. Mm-hmm. Self-sufficiency should be every business owner's goal. I think business owners who talk about how needed they are kind of speaks to how they define their value. You shouldn't be that needed in your business. You should have, over time, you really should have a solid team that can carry out your wants and your goals, so you can be freed up to dream.
Yeah, so going along with that question, or your answer to that question, like what are your guys' values, and what is your mission, and all of those?
I hear a lot about business plans, and it stressed me out for years, because you're supposed to have this very solid mission and values, specifically what you said. I've tried so many times to write them.
They're hard.
I have to agree. So I don't have in writing my mission, and I don't have in writing my values. I do know that when I train gardens managers, when I train my staff, honesty and clarity is a very key thing, and we implement that in a lot of different ways with how we communicate policies and how we deal with the requests of clients. We're honest and clear about our pricing structure, our policies, and if they have a question, then we always want to stay honest in that. I want to be clear because I think, my mission is to be just like the most lovely, like a super lovely company that deals with people in a really caring way. We maintain boundaries, which sometimes is uncomfortable. If I have an event that cancels, it's really uncomfortable to have a conversation with them that their contracted terms have non-refundable deposits. But I know that by enforcing that, we're maintaining that integrity, and that we're not choosing to show favoritism for who's worthy of receiving refunds and who's not worthy. And so just having very clear and honest business policies and practices. But I don't have a written mission statement, and I don't have written values.
Yeah, no, that was great. Okay, so knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently when you first started your business?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have started it. I think asking for help. There is a lot of good help. I never had a mentor. Nobody really ever showed me how to do things. The industry when I started was pretty closed. It wasn't a very welcoming industry. I'm not sure it is now. But I think connecting with other business people in general is helpful. They don't have to be in your industry. In fact, I find it quite helpful to talk to other business owners or business people that are in different industries, because you can better troubleshoot things. You can better understand how, okay, this is a situation we deal with, and then this is how it looks for you to deal with. Kind of same issue, but different industry standards and different outcomes. So I would say just asking for help and connecting with other business people for the sake of just knowing you're not insane.
Yeah.
Because you can easily create a story that everybody else has it together, and you're the only one that's trying to troubleshoot and get it figured out. But the more you talk with people, you start to adjust that story in your mind, and you go, okay, this is what's real. My story wasn't real.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing all right.
Question. Do you wish you would have gone to school so you could learn more before just jumping into the industry?
That's a valid question. No. I don't think my life path was to be that way. Now, I will say, for you guys playing out the scenario of starting a property, there are some very specific steps that we were either grandfathered into, so we didn't have to account for them, or the industry just wasn't what it was 11 years ago, especially for privately owned spaces. Now you can Google and find 70, 80 privately owned properties. When we started, there were 5 maybe. So I was getting in at a time where I don't know if I could have gotten more. I mean, maybe on the business side, but I don't handle accounting. I know numbers are super challenging for me. So I would have never been able to learn something like that. So I have an accountant from day one, and she's great. So I think for me, I just needed to figure it out and to do it. But I would say getting into it now, doing market research and getting good answers. Because if you start a property and you don't have the proper permitting, you'll cry.
What's the biggest drawback in your business?
That everything's up to me. Everything at the end of the day. Like some days I just want to go home and I'll have to tell my partner, like, I don't want to make a decision. I just want it to be planned for me. Because it can get to the point where every little decision is ultimately my yes or no, and that can get overwhelming.
Yeah.
Gracie, the sprinkler head over here is not working properly. Where do you want this parking lot sign? Is this email okay? This client had this question, and just like on and on and on. In and of themselves, it's like easy breezy, but like, what color do you want to paint the house? Do you know, like just on and on and on. So from very trivial to like significant things, just the sheer weight of everything ultimately being up to you and for you to handle. Like I can't pass off a hard conversation with a client like Danielle. Ultimately, I'm gonna have to have it.
Yeah.
So that's gotta be the most challenging.
If we were to meet again in 5 years, looking back, how would you define and be happy with your progress?
So it would be and is my expectation that the gardens, which it is this year, is fully reserved. This year we were fully reserved. Probably either eight months to a year out. Our reservations for weddings were completely full. So that would be my expectation moving forward, is that we would know our calendar a year out, and then it would simply be allowing reservations for different types of social events. So like on the business side, that would be it. And then I think self-sufficiency, for me to only be working here like 2 or 3 days a week in office, because everything is so smooth and seamless. And then I don't know what I will do, but I'll do something, something else. So I think for me that would be a successful, like a point of success, that we're fully reserved, that we have, I mean, in addition to that, like have a really positive reputation in the industry, with our couples, and in the community too.
Okay. We already went over your background in education. What advice would you give to someone who might be thinking of building a business similar to yours?
I get asked this sometimes because people will think, oh, my parents have a really pretty backyard, they should do weddings too. Something like that. I'm like, I don't know, and maybe they probably haven't been here if they say something like that, because they just don't understand the scope of it, right?
Right.
So I would say definitely do exactly what you guys are doing as far as talking and experiencing venues. Venues are just like anything in life. Like it's a very particular type of industry. Like catering has its own aspect and like way of interacting with events and their responsibilities. It translates a bit into venue, but like you're dealing with so many different levels. Everything from, policy, city and permitting, to the logistics of chairs and tables and getting them from point A to point B, and are you buying them, are you renting them, the condition of them, your policies, your contracts, interactions with clients, and how hard-lined are you going to be, and what are your policies, what is your culture, and then the execution the day of, and you're dealing with expectations, and how you set those expectations with your couples. And you're in an industry that a lot of times it's yes, and they're expecting to hear yes, but if you do that, you'll burn yourself out. So I think simply just seeing what's out there, and I think like on a real real advice level is, I keep kind of bringing it up, but you've got to check in with the city. You could get a cease and desist like easy if you're not properly set up. Then you've done all this investment potentially into a property, and you're all excited, and you have your website up, and they're like, oh no, you don't have this permit. You've got to put in this structure, you have to sprinkler this, you have to have this kind of signage, we have to have this sort of access, and you won't be able to operate without doing it. So then you'd be stuck.
Yeah. In the beginning, what financial steps did you take in order to build your business?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, my story is a little bit well, I don't know if it's different. My story is my own because it was my dad and I who started this. So he's my landlord. In that beginning stage. So that means like as far I didn't have to seek out like a loan to purchase a property.
Okay.
I did have to consider how many events I would have to reserve in order to meet the financial need. And then I had to take an industry, like look at the industry and see what was reasonable as far as rates. And then naturally, you figure out X amount of dollars per event, how many events. So I did that, excuse me. But I also think I just did a lot of the work myself to make sure that I didn't overextend. Which, I mean, that's just the way I chose to do it. I'm not saying it's the best. Yeah, is there anything specific, like within that question that would be helpful? Okay.
Not really. I mean, just knowing that your father owns the property then, if I'm correct. Okay, so that was, that's huge in the fact of, starting a business, that you have that family help. And that's one of the aspects that we're learning as well, is that, when you're wanting to start a new business,
Family is your greatest resource.
yeah, family is your greatest resource. And that seemed to work for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. My dad and I work pretty flawlessly together. I don't think that's a common story, but we do. We have a really like good mutual respect for each other, and so he trusted. I just trusted that I'd make a way, and we did.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Financial, like, what did it, if you know off the top of your head, like the cost for the tent and the tables and the chairs, I mean, like all the stuff that you have available, do you have an estimated cost of what that was for you?
I mean, 100,000 would be easy.
Okay.
Easy for the tent, and even that tent I purchased from, we had rented it for a few years, and then I purchased it, so that was even like a good situation for us, and I didn't have to buy it brand new.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, easily between chairs, tables, and that tent.
Yeah.
Kind of going hand in hand with that, if you don't mind me asking, like, let's just say off of like a year-to-year basis, how many events do you have to plan in order to break even?
My break even would be, I think, hosting, I feel like 35. Yeah, I think 35.
Okay.
35 events a year? Now, is this just weddings or is that just events, period?
It would be full day reservations, so in that case, it'd be weddings, yeah.
Okay.
And then how long did it take you to become profitable, like starting from the beginning?
In my third year.
Okay. That's pretty quick, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. What is your average number of guests? I know that you said that you guys have a max of 300.
Yes, I think probably our average, I would say 150 is average. We definitely do have higher, but I think it's just across the board. Yeah, 150.
Okay. What is the first question people typically ask while like visiting the venue?
I do have an answer to this. I don't often do the tours, so I'm trying to think.
Or just
I
like when
mean-
people call even.
Well, I mean, really, what people want to know is, people want to know rates. They want to know what they can expect. Catering is a huge part of a venue. Like, what are your policies regarding catering? What's your policies regarding bar service is a very common question. But those are like early on, very key. What can I do? How can I plan? Because at that point, they're thinking like, am I looking at a venue that's all inclusive, and that if I reserve with you, I'm picking my menu, my decor, and have my place and date or am I looking at a venue where it's a location, and then I'm also considering like what company I want to do food, and those two couples are very different. And then you have like another kind of a couple where it's they want the freedom to potentially like bring in their own food. So that's a different kind of a couple. So early on, you're gonna get those basic questions to kind of filter out what property makes sense to them. But other questions we would get are basic things like what's included, tables and chairs, the setup and the breakdown. And again, I think that speaks to the kind of experience that they want. If they're wanting to have a property where they have the option to set things up, then that tells me that their budget dictates they're looking for a lower cost option. If they want an expected experience where to be taken care of, then that is a different type of experience they're looking for.
So do you guys like do cleanup and all that, or is that on the guests themselves? or
So
the clients?
yeah, cleanup is taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're a couple here, that won't be a part of your experience or your guests.
That's awesome. How do you guys accommodate last minute weather? I know you guys have like the tent, but
Yeah, I mean the tent is it. It is a very real part of understanding that you're considering a garden venue. We only run events May through mid-October because that is the good weather season in this part of Washington. If we have inclement weather, there's a few things actually that we do on purpose. One is that my ceremony chairs are slatted; they are not padded.
Okay.
So rain is not soaking in those pads, because if you get a padded chair that got rained on early in the morning, even if it clears up, you're sitting on a wet pad and then you've got, you're wet. So that's one thing that I've done on purpose. The other thing is our tent includes, the tent's included. That's a big deal. And then I have walls that are already installed on that tent. They're not like an additional thing. So if need be, the tent can be completely enclosed or partially enclosed. At that point, you pretty much have a building. Like it's very solid. And then we have a inclement weather plan. And because we work with partnered companies, the catering company that's on site, they have a knowing of what needs to happen if there's a transition that needs to occur. So a couple can either choose to tell us in the morning time, they know matter-of-factly that they're gonna have the ceremony in the tent, then we will adjust the layout. The guests will still be seated at their tables because there's no proper way to have a complete ceremony set up and a reception set up and then transition while people are like at the edge of the tent.
yeah.
That's uncomfortable. So we can do an official like secondary layout to accommodate that. But if it's a last minute thing, like last August we had a wedding where it rained a lot right when the ceremony was beginning. And so the bride came back into the house and she took a moment and she's like, it's gotta be in the tent. So the guests just walked over to the tent. I mean, at a wedding, everybody's there to have the best time.
Yeah.
So the guests were like the sweetest. They didn't even want to sit at the tables. They were all standing like around the couple under the tent.
Aw.
And when she came down, they were all clapping and so excited. So they had, they made a particular kind of memory that day. They ended up being able to get photos. Usually we're not like weather beginning to end, like rain. So they got all these really beautiful photos in the ceremony area as bride and groom. But the tent is the main thing.
That's awesome. What did your 5-year plan look like in the beginning versus what actually happened?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I think my 5-year plan was just not to fail, and not to fail meaning like not be in the red. That was my 5-year plan, is just to make it. I think some like added things to that was, I guess the best way I can answer that. Yeah, I didn't want to start something I couldn't maintain, or like, I don't want to say complete because it's not completed, it's still going. So I think it was just to be financially successful. I didn't really have a plan. I knew how many events needed to be hosted and how many like dollars I needed to make. I personally didn't make a lot of money those first 5 years at all, but that was fine.
So going along with that, how were you able to stay afloat like during those 5 years? Like, did you rely on your partner or your dad or?
Yeah, in my early years, my dad and I did do quite a bit together, and he continues to be not active in the company and hasn't been for many years now, but yeah, I did. And in my couple few years, I did have family that helped me like with parking and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I had cousins like with black polo shirts on, like parking cars. But I really think I just chose to do a lot of myself. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's how I coped.
Yeah.
With making sure like that I made it happen.
Well, didn't that also reduce your cost too by doing it yourself? You didn't have to hire someone else to do it, so therefore your bottom line was a little bit better affected.
Yeah, and hearing you say that reminds me, I used to hire somebody only during the on season. I could only afford to have somebody work in the office when it was most busy because I was getting revenue like at that time. And that may be another notable thing as far as revenue. Like, it's common in the wedding industry to have a deposit and then you are having the remaining balance due like 2 months before or like a month before. Mm-hmm. And then financially that's pretty rough, right? Like, you're taking money up front and then that's supposed to sustain, and then you get money like 6 months, sometimes a year and a half later, you're getting the remaining balance. So balancing that business model is like really rough. So I've learned it's better for us as a company, but also for the couple to have more scheduled payments.
Okay.
So we choose to do the option of monthly payment plans, or doing what we refer to as an installment payment, which is 6 months before a date. So it paces the payments out.
Okay.
It's helped us better plan and have more consistency on the financial side. And I know for certain it's better on the couple side too, because it's a lot less like rough when because that 2 months out and 1 month out, you're paying the catering bill, the DJ bill, and then your venue rate is you have several $1,000 balance. Like, it's been better for their planning purposes as well. Mm-hmm.
So what do you guys do November through April, like during off season?
Yeah, we do allow for events to be hosted, small events, like under 50, and they can be hosted in here and like outside, just right here. The tent goes down.
Okay.
So the property kind of hibernates during that time. We focus a lot on, reservations are happening year round. Engagement season runs through, it's all the holidays. It's just January, February, December, right? December, January, February. That's the engagement season because you have all those great holidays where families are getting together and couples are getting engaged. So we'll see a lot of reservations during that time. There are opportunities for wedding shows. At this point, we don't need to do them, so I don't participate in the wedding shows. I did do the Seattle one this last year, but that'll be last time I do it. So yeah, we revisit logistics, update contracts, do property projects. That's the big thing. We can't do property projects when we're rocking, so
Yeah.
I have to plan everything in the off season for any upgrades or any changes we do out here.
Where do you guys market? Like mainly social media or how?
Yeah. So social media for sure. A lot of it's referrals at this point in Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're like on Wedding Wire and the Knot, but I don't have like paid accounts. So we're on there, but I don't.
If you don't mind me asking, what is like the average cost of a wedding?
For here.
Yeah.
So we definitely see a range, like any property is going to. You're gonna have a couple who loves the simplicity of the gardens, and they're gonna on purpose be simplistic in their design and like in their food and such. I would say for us, we probably see weddings range from like 60 to 100,000. Yeah, for budgets out here.
Okay. What are or were some unexpected costs that occurred the first couple years?
Oh my gosh. I've had so many interesting things happen out here. One that comes to mind is I had a different pergola structure down there. And we had a windstorm, and I came up the driveway because I don't live here. I came up the driveway, and that pergola structure had blown over. And not just blown over, it had twisted itself, and it was in the water. And I also had a tent that was up in this grass area here, which I no longer permit, and it wasn't staked properly, and it came through and took off like the 2 lantern lights in front, like just ripped them off. And so there's like stuff like that happens where you have to quickly troubleshoot and figure out, oh my gosh, a couple has an expectation of what this property's supposed to look like. Like, I've got to figure it out. How do I get a pergola structure out here? How do I get it installed and like ready? So there's things like that come up. I mean, on the staffing side, I do really, there's not things that like, where I get overextended. Like that's pretty well understood, and like that factored into my overall budget for the year. But stuff like that is the things that can get you. Weather does something and you're like, oh damn. Yeah, I mean, now it's like a couple days ago, I'm like, oh, there's a light out in the chandelier. Let's get it fixed. Or somebody ripped off my bathroom sign last weekend and didn't like that I had a no smoking sign over there, so they ripped that off too.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and I had one guest set off a fire extinguisher in a bathroom.
So how do things like that work? Like, is it the guests or your couple has to pay for that, or how does that work?
So every event has a security deposit.
Okay.
We actually do holds, so we put holds on credit cards. If everything is well and fine, which is our hope as well, that hold gets released. If there is damage, then the individual working on site, if they notice it, they're to document it. We have a checkout process with whoever the couple dictates is like the person that they want us to check out with at the end of the evening. So, I mean, we see things, like sometimes things can get missing, or rugs can get marked, or, items can get damaged. I mean, those things occur. And so that'll just be noted. And then in their contract, it does list some specific fees, but sometimes it's just figuring out what the cost to fix it is. Like for example, I had one wedding last year. Best I could tell, they tipped over nail polish and it got onto the floor over there. And then in an effort to clean it up, they poured nail polish remover, which had acetone. So it bleached out the color in that tile over there. I didn't know if I had to replace the floor or if it could be remedied, but I had to get 2 companies to come out and bid on it, and just kept the client informed. And then, I mean, the cost for making, we were able, I didn't have to replace the floor. We were able to get it fixed. So just that, I mean, the cost to get it fixed is what they get charged. Sometimes it's over their security deposit. Sometimes it's more.
That's crazy. Okay, well, those are all of my questions.
Yeah, those are all of mine, or well, the ones that we came up with earlier, so.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
That
thank
was
you.
super helpful.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
my pleasure.
I guess one last question is, do you guys offer guests to stay here at all? Like, do you have any, like, is there a room here where they can stay?
Overnight
Yeah.
houses.
No.
Yeah.
I think maybe other people would be excited about like adding that. So, and this reflects back on the way like it's my business, I get to run it the way I prefer. That seems like a nightmare to me. Having an overnight that I have to now clean and take care of, or make sure somebody else is taking care of it. So I choose not to. I have the space to do it.
Yeah.
My dad loves the idea of cabins, and so I'm like, I am not doing it. But I know some people, some property owners, like they like to have a lot of offerings and a lot of services, and it's the way that they work. They like to be busy in that way. I like things just very clean and super simple. So no, nobody can stay here. They've got to go.
And going with that, what is your guys' like like curfew or?
Yeah, we do. We've got a curfew. So 10 p.m. for Friday, Saturday events, and then the property closes at 11, and then it's an hour earlier for Sunday through Thursday.
Okay. Oh,
Very cool.
yeah, very cool.
Well, we just love your property. Well, at least I do on this side.
Yes, it's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. So now this here, this house is set up for the bride and groom, or just the bride, or?
Yeah, it's solely for the bridal party. So as you can see, the doors are coated, so we really do try to keep it as private as possible. There's an entire upstairs area, which you can go see. It's a dressing room, hair and makeup room upstairs. So yeah, this whole space is for them.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I would love to take a look around if you don't
Go
mind.
for it.
Do you mind if I take a few pictures as well?
Oh yeah, property loves photos taken.